There is a challenge that is coming from digital currencies such as blockchain technologies.
So I think it's important to share that anything can be tokenized.
All the money.
I like the idea of a gold standard. I mean, it could be used in a very cryptocurrency way.
Very much sooner than a lot of people understand or think. We will be all at a level playing field.
Hey, welcome to the show. I have a very special guest with me today, Mr. John Lombela from Axalio. Welcome, John. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much for having me, Molly. I'm doing fantastic. Happy to be here.
And this is so cool that we can do these interviews like across the world. I'm here in Georgia and John is in South Africa. And it's almost like we're in the same room, which is just really neat that we can do that.
Well, such is the pleasure of technology,
Agreed.
internet, and it actually reducing the distance between two people and across the globe. So pretty excited about it.
Amazing. So we're going to talk about the tokenization of natural resources. But before we get into that, John, I'd love you to tell me the story about Axalio and why you started it, what its mission is, and sort of how much progress you've made to date.
Sounds good, Molly. Thank you very much for asking me that question. First of all, a little bit of a background. I'm a software engineer trained 17 years ago here in South Africa, right? So I pretty much understand the technology. And also I had the privilege of being a part of the one of the largest corporate investment bank in South Africa called Standard Bank. As part of the groups, I was there at CIB, and I was running two different divisions as a round bank manager. Such a funny title, by the way. But as a round bank manager, I was overseeing all the internal systems for four different divisions. So you've got compliance, governance, I believe. Claim and the fraud department. So those were part of my internal clients, and then I moved into change the bank manager. So essentially, the change the bank manager is from around the bank you're literally overseeing systems, but from change the bank you're literally writing new features and changing codes and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of a pretty cool way of differentiating two different functional roles within the bank. However, I've been an entrepreneur for the last 15 years, and I remember starting my first firm as a software development house, whereby we ought to achieve, solving problems and developing across different industries, and I found myself in the mining sector as well, right? So having an understanding of both the landscape around how money moves and in a constant search of alternative ways to raising funds, and then finding myself in this pit of opportunities in the mining sector. And that was back 9 years ago, 2014. I saw that there was a huge opportunity for us to be able to solve some of the problems surrounding artisanal miners. And the reason being, I was interested in raising capital to help artisanal miners get access to what they needed, buy equipment, extract their minerals, and then export them to some buyers in Dubai. So I've been in that cycle for a very long time, and I can tell you, Molly, it's an extremely, first of all, a rigged industry, extremely politicized, but at the same time, very difficult to navigate. So you find these guys who come from Canada. Canada is very good when it comes to mining, Australia or the UK, and not so much the US, but quite a few guys from the US definitely still do, especially in the diamonds business. But so then you have the Chinese who have been able to dominate the African market for a very, very, very long time. So I was like, you know what? I need to find ways to solving the problem. But in doing so, I lost a lot of money. I've had first-hand experience of going down to the lion's den and not only losing money, but seeing all of these craziest things that exist out there. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? As an entrepreneur, although I lost a lot of money, we're talking about six figures, but I still saw an opportunity for me to change things around. But I wasn't too sure how, and that led me in the path of discovering the power of what existed in the world of alternative finance. Not so much about your traditional banking side of things, because these guys aren't really funding these businesses because they find it extremely, high risk, and which it is, by the way. I mean, look at me, I lost my money, right? But fast forward 2015, actually 2012, I came across the word Bitcoin for the first time, and I was like, okay, well, Bitcoin, what does that mean and whatever. But I wasn't too caught up into the gist of things until about 2014. 2013, I came across blockchain technology. That kind of sounded so cool. And because every single year as a tech guy, I wanted to kind of learn everything, every single thing that's happening in the tech space. And blockchain was interesting to me. But it wasn't until 2014 that I really decided to start really diving a little deeper. But early 2015, I was like, hang on a second. Let me actually go ahead and grab this piece of paper around that Bitcoin white paper. And I can tell you, Molly, by reading the white paper, I was blown away by what I read and understood. So remember, I'm a tech guy. I worked in the bank, and I see all these opportunities around the world. I wasn't so much caught into the money-making aspect of things. I was caught up at, first of all, what is the technology solving as a problem? That is the one thing that caught my attention. That's where I felt completely like, you know what, I'm possibly here. And this is 2015.
What's the problem that you thought you saw being solved?
First of all, it was the notion of democratization. For the first time in history, ever, for the first time in history, we could break down the barriers that prevented people to get access to what the big boys are having access to. For the first time in history, thanks to blockchain technology, we can democratize access to financial services, to financial products, to financial opportunities, to wealth creation potential. Before even thinking about moving money around, because Bitcoin was created to do that, right? But I started diving a little deeper. If you think about it, the notion of tokenization is truly embedded in the concept of Bitcoin before it really became mainstream, thanks to Ethereum, right? Bitcoin is there to solve this problem. If you think about it, the notion of DeFi is really embedded in the real attributes of Bitcoin. But it is thanks to Ethereum that we're able to now really go beyond, because obviously we're talking about the fees, how hard it is to be able to mine a coin, and we're talking about the 10 minutes lags and all that kind of, yes, fair enough. But Bitcoin is the grandfather, the godfather of everything that gave birth to everything we see today. And yes, Ethereum definitely pushed those boundaries even further, and we're able to see a proliferation of various other technologies out there. And to tell the truth, having gone through the probably 4 or 5 different cycles of bubbles, the one thing that still keeps me grounded and still in this space is the promise of blockchain technology and the power of tokenization and the future of DeFi. Those are the only principles that really keep me grounded here. Now, fast forward to that again, 2016 or rather 2017, I came up with the word Exalio, but it's quite funny exactly how I came up with it. First of all, 2016, I'm like, you know what? I have to reserve a domain name that I will most likely use one day. I just didn't know what it was for at that time. And I reserved the domain name called Exalio. I didn't know what Exalio meant, Molly. I went ahead to create Exalio playing around with words because I wanted to sound like, if you think about it, right, the era of the internet and the Facebook of the world started a plethora of different names whereby founders would come up with crazy, stupid names out there, right? That sounded cool. The millennials created names sounding cool. And I came up with Exalio. I just don't know how that came about. But 2 years down the line, December 2018, I came up with the acronym of Exalio. And let me tell you what it is.
Okay.
It's Africa. Okay, so Axalio stands for African Exchange, okay? African Exchange and Liberal Investment Opportunity. So, why liberal? Thanks to blockchain technology, again, liberating the people from being able to get access to opportunities that were never provided to them before. And that exchange platform, we are for the first time creating a free marketplace where people will be able to, as easily as possible, first of all, unearth through Exalio, we are unearthing wealth creation potential by tokenizing true stores of value, such as gold, cobalt, and lithium. But at the same time, we want to be able, through Exalio, to export these best opportunities to the world, right? But also in Exalio, we can tokenize a Tesla stock. And in other words, I want to be able to import into Africa some of the best investment opportunities that exist, but tokenizing securities. And you know why, Molly? Because I am a Congolese citizen. I just happen to live in South Africa for the last 20 years, but I'm a global citizen who has traveled 40 plus one countries in the world. But I can tell you, as much as Tesla is what it is today, for the component coming from my country, the people from my hood are unable to even buy a single Tesla stock and benefit from the tremendous opportunity that Tesla creates. Think about it, last year, January last year, Tesla reached for the first time in history $1 trillion market cap. Who in Africa is able to benefit from that particular wealth creation potential, if not the capitalist in America or the early investors out of Silicon Valley and New York and so forth in America? And let alone, I mean, that disparity is still there even in the US as well. Not everybody is able to enjoy the same benefit, right? So that's the reason why I'm on this journey. And I do hope and I do believe that thanks to blockchain technology and tokenization, we'll be able to break those barriers and then open the floodgates of opportunities as it exists in Africa. And we're starting with commodities, and there we go. We're having this conversation right now.
So I have a couple questions about this. So let's just use the Tesla stock, for example. So would Axalio go and buy a bunch of Tesla stock and then tokenize it on a blockchain that you manage for exchange within the African market?
Okay, that would be one scenario. For example, yes, when we are able to bring into Africa some stocks, because the reason being, I mean, due to the OECD compliance and the fact that many guys in Africa don't have access to investment opportunity, I mean, just nobody can actually just easily walk into a Robinhood and say, you know what, let me just create my account and go KYC and start investing. It's not gonna happen, right? Number one, because I don't have a social security number that would allow me to make that happen. That's number one. Number two, the KYC process, you're going to be stopped, definitely, right? You are going to be stopped through the KYC process. And number three, well, Robinhood is only just in America. So what do you have to do? You got to go through various ways, and tokenization is one of them. And we can actually even create wrappers around it, whereby these folks who actually can invest into a single vehicle, such as through Exalio, and think of it as a pool. So we're pooling funds, we're investing here, and we just, when we actually get the yields back, we can actually distribute through the pool. So we manage our own pool, but we're investing as a single unit, because once again of those barriers, right? So I can't connect the dots directly. And I remember and I felt completely discriminated. There is a protocol, an API protocol called Drive Wealth out of New York. Beautiful protocol. And I reached out to them and they're like, hey, listen, it's okay, but for us to engage with you and even sign an NDA, we need to understand that, one, you've got the licenses to make that happen. Okay, well, South Africa, yes, we can work with you in South Africa, but if you go out of South Africa and start offering solutions to, let's say, Nigeria or the Congo or Zimbabwe, we're not going to allow you to do that because our APIs won't let you go in. Now, that alone shows you exactly how, ridiculous this global financial system is, right? Now, you get these guys who are taking components from your country, but they're telling you can't use that. Where's the logic right there? Mm-hmm. Okay? So you got to figure out ways, and thanks to blockchain technology, we can make that happen. But once again, we are going to keep a track record of the transparency that happens out there, the accessibility to global financial systems. Some of the best opportunities aren't only in the US, but also in Singapore, in Asia, or whatever. But also, look, think of Uber. Think of Uber, for example. Uber is probably one of the most successful IPOs in the tech industry ever, making people a tremendous amount of money. listing at a $75 billion market cap. I mean, that's ridiculous. Somebody who invested $5,000 as part of a pool. Look, think about that. Folks can invest as syndicates into a VC and benefit 10,000x whatever the Uber's returns if they stayed for that long, but they can't actually get the same result, or if we were to do that from Africa. So thanks again to blockchain technology and tokenization, we can break down those barriers by creating these innovative wrappers or vehicles that would allow us to invest into those pools. That's just one example, right? When it comes to investing in a stock. And then we're not even talking about commodities directly from Africa here.
Now, in the U.S., there's a lot of rules around tokenization of securities that makes it very unclear how to proceed lawfully or legally in the current environment. What's the regulation environment like in Africa? Do you have, there's so many countries, do you have to deal with sort of unique regulations for each one?
Undeniably, yes, but there is at least a global standard we can follow. Now, the U.S. market is a very unique market. I do believe that the SEC is only pressing on to prevent innovation from happening, and all these guys are certainly just fleeing the country and push. Look at Coinbase right now, exploring how they can actually establish themselves out of Dubai. Dubai's like, hey guys, welcome in the world of the free and opportunities and all that kind of stuff. Everybody's there. Everybody from around the world is in Dubai. Why? Because of the freedom they give you, because of the opportunity they give you. You see everybody from all nationalities in Dubai, and they're open to blockchain technology. They're opening the creating new corridors for crypto lovers, exchangers, and issuers, and so they open for that. They already understood. I mean, I don't know what the SEC or the US is all about. I couldn't really give a crap about that at this point in time, but I think it is what we need to realize is that yes, we need to follow certain standards. When it comes to Africa, we understand already that at a grassroots level, over the last decade, it's been very difficult to navigate the crypto terrain. But when it comes to countries like South Africa, since 2014, South Africa has never been against crypto. In fact, if at all, they actually made sure that, hey, they acknowledge the innovation around crypto, around Bitcoin particularly. They say, listen, it can be considered as a commodity, but for a very long time, one thing they wanted to figure out was how can they still, and they're still navigating that particular regulation, how can they tax, the earnings around it, right? But in terms of the innovation, they're like, hey, listen. In fact, it's a positive innovation. I do believe that by the end of this year or before, there will definitely be a regulatory framework that will be provided out there especially for crypto exchanges and so. But in terms of tokenization, there's no rule that prevents that to happen. If at all, I would think the following, right? Because crypto is welcome in South Africa, and there isn't any regulation preventing crypto from evolving here, right? I would still assume that if you tokenize, you're literally tokenizing, it's literally security still. And therefore, you need to understand you need to navigate between the two. So when you are issuing securities and you have a license to offer that, and because you're going over a blockchain protocol, you're still offering securities as if you would shares and all that kind of stuff on the JSE stock market. So I would assume that we will still be bound to those regulations when it comes to securities, right? Because think about it. If you were to tokenize a real estate, it's the same thing as creating a REIT, for that matter, a real estate investment trust, whereby you're fractionalizing those units and giving an opportunity to people to come and invest. That's all it is. So think around those lines. But now comes the issue of KYC, who invests. So those are the things that we can actually look into. But I feel that the regulation is still pretty open. And look, the fact that we're going crypto for guys to be able to invest and we issuing these tokens and so forth, even if South Africa doesn't have that particular flag, the Mauritius Island now has, right? I don't have to go to Lithuania like we used to before. Now we can just go in Africa. We can just go to the Mauritius Island, right? These guys just came out of the gray list, and now they're fully OECD compliant, and they've provided for the first time in Africa 6 different licenses that would allow people in a virtual digital asset to be able to acquire a license, a crypto license, a tokenization license, an ITO license, and come on. So, we have it. This is standard we can follow for us to be able to make those offers.
Amazing. So let's talk about tokenization for a second.
Sure.
You mentioned 3 particular minerals: gold, cobalt, and lithium.
Yeah.
So gold is well understood to be a store of value. It's been seen as money for a long time. So the tokenization of gold, I think, is a very unique and compelling case, especially if it's going to back currencies.
Correct.
Let's talk about the tokenization of cobalt and lithium, which are used in industry.
Yes.
So what would be the primary function of tokenizing cobalt, for example?
That's a very interesting question, Molly. And I think, look, contrary to gold and silver, or even the diamonds, you wouldn't go out there and hope that one day you are going to hold cobalt or lithium at your home, right? Those are really hazardous commodities that are unfriendly to our health and all that kind of stuff compared to gold.
Okay.
But here, the opportunity is to once again benefit. I wouldn't really. Let me finish this thought first. So benefit from the future value of these commodities in terms of the operations of that business. So if you are extracting a ton or a kilo of cobalt, at one point in time, 1 kilo of cobalt reached $100,000 per kilo in the Congo.
Okay.
That was, I believe, that was in between 2017 and 2018, somewhere there, right? So it went as high as 89,000 and eventually peaked at a mash before dropping down to 30,000 kilos. So because Elon Musk figured out, or is once again figuring out, a different way to try and avoid cobalt. You know why? You know why he wants to avoid cobalt? Because the largest producer of cobalt in the world is the Congo, and Congo is still under sanctions. And if he has to really acquire the cobalt, he knows that that cobalt is only going to come from Congo, right? And he doesn't want to deploy large sums of money to go out there and develop the cobalt industry, or even set up a special economic zone in this specific region, so that he can help develop the mines. And he's made it very clear he is not interested in developing the mines in the Congo, and that's why he went on, for example, to look for lithium. But the reality is there is still a great combination between lithium and cobalt to be able to combine these two, right? And that some of the components of cobalt are still used in producing batteries for electric vehicles. So he's still in his lab and research and development to try and figure out exactly how can cobalt be replaced. But until that happens, well, the Congo is still going to be the major producer of cobalt in the world. But here the interest for us is, for example, it could be the NFTs. NFTs could be that particular element that could be tied to the production or the business itself, right? The business endeavor. And we think of it, for example, as future, let's say ETFs, okay, or futures contract that are holding a certain value, and we can then distribute to NFT holders the potential yield around that particular opportunity. That's exactly what it will be. I'm not really looking to tokenize that particular asset. There's no real utility around that, and somebody is not good. But I mean, in terms of the business operations, right, and benefiting from the future yields and earning. And I'm talking about real yields. I'm not talking about the FTXs. I'm not talking about the Luna crisis. I'm talking about real yield that we can actually really benefit by tokenizing these things, whether it is NFTs or just your normal fungible tokens. The case is there for us to be able to benefit from that.
One thing you mentioned a few minutes ago is this idea of artisan mines. Does that simply mean you have sort of startup business owners, entrepreneurs going and launching their own mines to unearth minerals like cobalt?
I'll give you two examples. Let me give you one, for example, right? Let's go a practical example. I've got a mine right now. Uh, don't worry about the actual type of commodity. Whether it's, in fact, this one is gold mine, right?
Okay.
But the same thing I'm about to explain to you right now can apply to a gold mine, a cobalt mine, a lithium mine. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Now, this specific individual in Niger is looking to raise $10 million. Now,
Okay.
we could go out there and mint a whole bunch of NFTs. We could mint about 100,000 NFTs.
Okay.
And we can sell each NFT for about $100
Okay.
minimum. And we could get about 100,000 people from around the globe to actually buy these NFTs, raising $10 million. Now, the prospect of this specific business is that on a yearly basis, it can produce at least 250 kilo of gold on it. This is like the lowest minimum. We've taken the minimum amount possible that can be extracted.
Okay.
That still represents a whopping amount at the current price of gold, close to $63,000 a kilo. It represents a whopping amount of $13 million a year. Now, even if you were to take about 70% for the first year upfront for you to be able to cover operational cost and still recoup the following year, you're still in profit, whereby even a minimum of 10% is bringing you a good result, right?
Wow.
And I'm talking about real yield. I'm talking about real yields. You go to a traditional bank, you're attracting about 2% a year. You go to these large these crypto project. Okay, some of them are giving you about 6%, 8%, 18%, and so forth. But yes, we can achieve that the following year, because with a license that gives you for 30 years, you can generate at least a very good 20% a year, and I'm being very conservative here, 20% a year in perpetuity for the next 30 years.
Awesome.
You know what I'm saying? And
So
this
you
is
like-
only by issuing NFTs.
So you're crowdfunding sort of the role of a VC in the traditional world.
And there you go, you're just issuing NFTs, and that NFT is tied to the future earnings of that particular company as you go ahead and operate. And guess what? We're leveraging blockchain technology to be able to get those NFTs through. And that could be one applicable scenario right here.
But why are they NFTs and not fungible tokens that are interchangeable? What's
Now,
unique about it?
the fungible tokens now will be when you now issue a gold, for example, a gold-backed token. And now and this is something that we're currently working on right now. You see, there's two separate things.
Okay.
NFTs tied to the business operation.
Okay.
Fungible token tied to the actual underlying asset that you've extracted from that business operation. Now, you got to follow the rules. For example, be part of the LBMA accreditation process, the London Market Bullion Association in the UK, whereby if you follow certain protocols, and yes, we can also talk about, for example, child labor and being OECD compliant. We can talk about all that, but I mean, you understand the terrain, right? Assuming that all of that is taken into account, then what do? You grab the gold, you follow through the protocols, you pay the taxes, you extract the gold, and you take it into a refinery, say in Singapore or Metalor or in Switzerland. You refine it through an LBMA accredited refinery. Okay, so once it is done, you put them into bars. It could be 1 kilo bars or 5 kilo bars or 12 kilo bars. You make sure that the transportation process is handled through a firm like Brinks or Malkia Meat, which are globally reputable companies, to ensure the security and all that kind of stuff. And then you get into, let's say, a Malkia Amit vault, where you actually store the actual physical gold into that vault, into an investor grade 999 refined bars. And once you get to that point, you find an independent third party like a Lloyd's or an EY or whatever to come and audit independently that particular gold. There are costs associated into the whole chain, okay? And once you get to that point, now you mint. You mint exactly, if I've got about 1 kilo of gold, and I can say, what is going to be the denomination? I can say, fine, I can use gram for 1 kilo of gold for 1,000 gram, and therefore each one of my token can represent 8 gram of gold. Or I can go to milligrams, which makes it even more attractive, particularly in the global south, giving them like uh, this mindset of, hey, listen, with a $10 I can also own a piece of gold. You know what I'm saying? So that's exactly what it is. And now with 1 kilo you can have a million milligram representing just 1 kilo, and you can mint that. And by minting it, now you're managing that on chain for full transparency. You can only mint what has been fully audited. So those audits has to happen as well. And if, for example, you redeem that for physical gold or for a transaction online, you burn the tokens, right? And of course, there's a whole mechanism around it. That for fungible token, yes, you can do. And now, what do you do with that particular fungible token? What is the utility behind it? It's just going to be just for an investment, as an investment vehicle that you hold, for example, and to hedge against inflation, or you want to be able to use that for something else, right? That now depends on every single business. And in our case, we have our own that will be known very soon when we publish our white paper.
One question that critics of tokenized gold bring up with me when I publish stuff about that idea is when you have this initial audit to verify that the gold is there, right? And then you mint the tokens. What's to stop someone from taking that gold and moving it over to another vault and issuing a second set of tokens? How do you verify that the gold is there on a continuous basis?
But but that's the beauty of working through with these LBMA accredited firms, because if these firms tamper with that, then what's the point for them to exist in the first place, right? And if for years these firms have existed, these firms set the standards, and we believe the standards. It's the same thing as being a bank. I mean, as much as the U.S., the Fed prints trillions of dollars, but we still believe them. As much as we hate them, we still believe them. You know what I'm saying? So, look, Zimbabwe cannot just go out there and print billions of dollars, but the Fed can. Why? Because the dollar is the standard right now, and we abide by those rules. The Fed can do that, but Zimbabwe cannot. So there's a bit of a nuance out there. So as long as we, and that's the unfortunate truth, the unfortunate reality of the global financial system right now. It favors the global north and does not the global south. And yes, you're asking a very important question, but we have to abide by them rules. And it's one of the reasons why this whole gold tokenization thing is still, not well accepted, especially in America. There's a lot of people out there who would rather want to go and that's why people went ahead and funded Terra Luna. You know why? Because for the first time in history, we got a crazy young man out there thinking about this algorithmic USD stablecoin type of currency, and we see, oh wow, it makes sense. Yes, it does make sense over here, but he hasn't really fully he's not an economist, he's not this and he's not that. He's just a genius, okay, who comes with a crazy idea. And guess what? Billions of dollars actually flock in to go and support that particular project. Because everybody, including the US, some of the guys in the US, are fed up with the monotony, the monopoly of the US and the endless printing of these papers. But the Fed is the Fed. The Fed is the largest government, and they will still crash you down. And that's exactly what I've done with Doquan. And today, unfortunately, well, he's going to spend the rest of his years in bad shape. You know what I'm saying? So look at what happened to FTX. So we live in a crazy world. And Africa is looking to develop itself. So yes, let's use the system that exists to develop Africa, but at the same time, let's build better mechanism that will take Africa into a financial system that will really develop its own people, and yet still benefit the world as a whole. So gold for us really is just a commodity that is there to preserve wealth. Just like you mentioned, everybody understands what it is historically and today and tomorrow. Look, with regard to the war, what's happening? Everybody's flocking into gold, right? So for me, in the future, there's going to be two fundamental components that are going to balance out and back the financial system: gold, Bitcoin.
Okay. Do you see the countries of Africa taking the resources they have, like gold, and backing their own sovereign currency with them?
Look, that's a very important question. And yes, because Zimbabwe is just actually doing that. After Zimbabwe is probably one of the look in the southern hemisphere. Zimbabwe definitely has a tremendous amount of gold. It is said that, I mean, I've been to Zimbabwe a few times and I've met with the vice president as well. And I've spoken to them in 2019 about what they are, by the way, doing today,
Okay.
which is tokenizing gold. I went there and I spoke to them about it.
Amazing.
And they're doing that because they're trying to navigate the sanctions. The sanctions are preventing Zimbabwe to thrive.
Why are they sanctioned? I don't know the history of that.
Well, the sanction with the U.S. They can't freely trade. But I mean, look, I don't want to talk about the politics around the sanction, but let me address the issue still. It is said that Zimbabwe is, you probably know the story of Solomon in the Bible, right? And how wealthy Solomon was. It is said that Solomon gold was actually in Zimbabwe, right? So there's a tale out there where if you go, there's this area when you go, you feel like gold is around you. As you go to those places in Zimbabwe, you just feel, you sense it, you see it, that gold is around you. And you don't have to go too far to actually really start digging that gold out. And but with that being said, to answer your question directly, yes, Zimbabwe is doing that. Whether they're doing the correct, and here's another funny thing, right? When a country, a sovereign nation does that, guess who comes back knocking at the door and bringing that stick and the big boy's pants? The IMF is there and say, hey, listen, don't do whatever you're doing out there. You haven't thought it that well. But I mean, come on, who is there to think about it well? But that's a question for another day.
So how did
look at what I've done. Look at what I've done in El Salvador.
Yes, I'm not a
I don't
fan of
know
the IMF. So, as someone who's in Africa, speaking with people in other countries, how do most Africans or people talking about this stuff feel about what Zimbabwe's doing? Do other nations in Africa want to emulate that and issue their own gold-backed currencies, or is there skepticism about whether it'll work?
It's a little too early to tell, but I can tell you now that a lot of people like myself and many others are really looking to, first of all, we're encouraging that, but it has to be done right with the expert. But to also answer your question, I would say directly yes. And I'll give you an example. Central African Republic. The president is an intelligent PhD mathematician, somebody who's really, really clued up in terms of what he's doing. And you know what he wants? He has created a project called the Sango project. If you go to sango.com, you've heard about that probably. The Sango project is aimed to be the first crypto city in the world, perhaps actually in Africa, perhaps in the world. Now, Central African Republic is one of the most poorest country in the world. There's probably one or two hotels out there that will welcome you, and you feel like you're probably in their 5-star, you'd feel like you're in a 3-star hotel in the US, right? But now it's extremely rich in natural resources. But what are they saying? The president is very clever. And he says, listen, if we have to transform this nation, and think about it for a second, Mona. Think about it for a second. And I'm not saying this is going to happen overnight, but it will take great determination and really courage to continue on that path. Because now he's inviting everybody in the crypto space to come and say, listen, we are a sovereign nation. Come in and let's build a crypto city. I give you the gold. I give you the diamonds. I give you the cobalt. I give you the lithium. I give you the nickel. I give you the tantalite. I'll give you a cassiterite. I give you everything that you need. I've got it right here. All I need from you, bring your money here, build this city. In fact, when you invest, I give you citizenship the first day so that you can enjoy coming in here, back and forth, but together, let's build this country, this nation. We need investment. You see, it takes a wild, why do we do that? Out of desperation. Because it's almost a non-investable country. Do they want it like that? I don't think they want it like that. But the world is oppressing them like that. But now through these clever ways of doing things, and I think about it, right? That can just become like the El Salvador of Africa, where people can flock in and say, wow, I want to be there. I want to be there, and I want to embark on the journey to helping develop that nation further. And you can talk to the president directly. I've got him on speed dial. You go out there, boom, that's it. But you know, these are the things that really happen. And yes, some African nations are taking a stance to make that happen.
How does Exalio fit into all this?
Well,
Sort of
for now,
nations-
I don't want to be seen as somebody who wants to go out there and have this negative connotation. For us, we have a very clear mission. It's going to be a progressive journey. We want to build a sustainable business and equitable future for all, whereby wealth creation is really at the center of our message. That's really, really the fundamental right there. But in our journey, we want to be friends with the governments of the world, of Africa. We want to be, we not only do we have the tokenization aspect of commodity, but we also have the carbon credit. We have our novel chain that we call green chain, with the idea of being able to create a secondary market for carbon credit exchange. Now think about it. At COP 26 in Glasgow in the UK, Biden was there, and I remember the pictures. Biden and my president, shaking hands and taking pictures and all that kind of stuff. It was noted that the DRC is going to be the solution country to solve the climate crisis around the world because of the large rainforest we have, second to the Amazon in Brazil, spanning from all the way from Brazil to the Ecuador. However, Brazil's rainforest has gone through severe issues, especially with the fire and all that kind of stuff, that it's preventing them to being that country now. And then the DRC takes over. Now, if you think about it, the DRC alone is missing out on a yearly $100 billion in taxes being paid to them, so that guess what? They can avoid cutting the trees, respond to the climate crisis accord in Paris, and be paid these taxes. And these taxes are just going to help them develop their own industries and their own infrastructure, right? And just to give you some perspective, last year, July 26th or 27th, there was a very big auction market. And the auction was what? We have oil blocks in the Congo. And guess what the US is saying to the Congo? Mr. Congo, we urge you not to develop your oil blocks because this is going to destroy the planet. But then we turn around and say, hey, hang on a second, but how did you build your own nation? How did you build your own infrastructure? And now you're preventing me to build now we've got so much oil, and you don't want me to build, to extract, to develop, to explore? But how about this? How about you pay me $100 billion a year and I don't cut a single tree? Now I'll be able to build my infrastructure.
All right.
You know
So
what I'm
if
saying?
if someone's watching this and wants to either invest in Axalio or contribute, what's the pathway for someone to be a part of this?
Thank you, Molly, for that question, because we're actively investing, raising funds and talking to investors. Right now, I am very happy to let you know that we've received a grant. In fact, right after you, I'm speaking to the guys, so I'm going to be have to wrap up very soon. We've received a grant to build on the blockchain layer 1 protocol. So that I'm super pumped and super excited about it. So far, we've been bootstrapping ourselves. We've built an MVP that we are getting ready to launch by September this year. We are launching our crowdfunding campaign because last year was a desperate moment for me. I did not raise a single penny. But you know what? Earlier this year, I realized it was a blessing in disguise because there was Celsius, there was Voyager, there was BlockFi, there was Luna Crisis, Terra Luna, there was FTX, and early this year there was SVB. So it kept me really grounded in identifying exactly what needs to be done. So we're doing something amazing. If anybody wants to invest with Exalio, an investor or any VC out there, please feel free to reach out to me. It could be through Molly, definitely, or it could be to my email address directly. Can I give my email address here? Is that okay?
Of course.
That will be johnjohn@exalio.com. That will be AXALIO.com. Or reach out to me on LinkedIn. That will be John Lombela with the same name. and or on Twitter by the same name as well. Feel free to contact me or even through Molly, so that we can actually open up those awesome conversations and talk about how we are a different type of fintech, one that is leveraging blockchain and really focusing on solving the real problems and not just the whole payments. I'm tired of these payments that people who just want to disrupt Western Union. People want more than payment. Think about it, Molly. I'm going to close on this, right? Think about it. The remittances in Africa from the African diaspora moved from 39 billion to 90 billion. Let me run it off to 100 billion.
Okay.
Remittances. This is sending money. Now, you take 1% of that, that's about $1 billion, can definitely go a long way to develop some infrastructure out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can help in healthcare, it can help in agriculture, it can help in building roads, it can help in real estate building, it can help in government-owned issues. 1 billion. Now, 10% of that, that's 10 billion. What does that mean? The African diaspora has enough money to solve Africa's problems. Not by just sending, but how about the African diaspora goes through Exalio, which he's developing programs and infrastructure, financial infrastructure, to help the African diaspora to be part of investment programs, both in line with B2G agreements, government, or B2B businesses, or supporting consumers out there, so that together we can help build and things that we can consume ourselves. Instead of just sending money for consumption, how about we just send money to build so that we can then consume the same things that we have actually put our money to build. That's exactly the narrative. And that's the message I want to send to everybody out there, because Exalio, we're here to democratize access to wealth creation for everyone. And we shouldn't leave anybody, so that we can achieve a couple of things, the 3 I's: inclusion, impact, and innovation. Thank you very much, Molly.
So thankful you took the time. This is a really cool project. I'm excited to watch it, and we'll have you back on in a couple months and sort of see how your progress is going. So please feel free to update me. I'll put all the links in the description. I'm not going to put your email address simply because the spam bots will pick it up, but people can message you directly from your website or LinkedIn.
Molly, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for reaching out to me, and it's been a pleasure. I'm always